Back when Eisenhower was the president, golf courses is where most of his time was spent. So I never really listened to what the president said because in general, I believed that the general was politically dead. But he always seemed to know when the muscles were about to be flexed. Because I remember him saying something, mumbling something about a military-industrial complex. Americans no longer fight to keep their shores safe, just to keep the jobs going in the arms-making workplace.
Hello, okay. You see the name Peter Schneider. That's not my name. That's my pseudonym in cyberspace. But let me open by saying this, that I was called upon to, requested to do a prayer. And I've been in 15 countries and have openly participated in probably 6 or 7 different religions. And therefore I claim none. But I find that when it's time to pray, many of us think that prayer is something that is esoteric or some metaphysical type of practice. But for me, it's real simple. Some of us don't understand that we actually are enjoying things that none of us earned. There's nobody living who earned the things that they have. We like to think that all that we have, we worked hard for, and look how hard we worked and everything like that. But everything that we have not because of what we did, but because someone suffered to make it happen. All women would not vote if women in the past had not suffered to make sure that women had the right to vote. All white men, that's white women, all white women, all white men would suffer if in 1828, white men hadn't rioted in Kentucky and Tennessee to make sure that white men could vote. We're rather familiar with us Africans in America and what we did for the vote, but people forget that everybody got what they got because somebody disrupted, somebody was jailed, somebody was beaten, somebody was suffering. So the only prayer that I have to give is this: let all of us who have something remember that everything we have, we got through somebody else's suffering and we did not earn it ourselves. And let us understand too that it is our duty for the future generations to earn what we have. And the only way we can earn what we have is in our willingness to suffer so that those that follow us have what we don't have. And with that, I say that of all those things that we pray to, whatever it is, whomever it is, let us pray to whatever that is and whatever we believe in to inspire us to participate in the process of not sitting and thinking or sitting and praying or sitting and meditating, but to let the sitting and thinking and sitting and praying and sitting and meditating motivate us to do something. Because sitting and thinking, sitting and praying, sitting and meditating is meaningless unless we follow up with some kind of action to go against those things that prevent everybody from having what just by being on the planet we should be able to participate in. And with that, I would say that's it.
Thank you, Teju. Mm-hmm. Welcome everyone to this evening. My name is Tony Tavita Martinez, and tonight, this talk sits really deep to the heart. It's sitting deep to the heart because I come to you tonight all merged as one, no more compartmentalized. I sit it with you as a mestiza woman, as an ADOS woman, American descendant of slaves, a Black woman, a therapist, a sister, a mother, an irritant to some people in society. And before we get going with tonight's talk, I just want to set up a structure because tonight is a special night because it's in honor of the Black Lives Matter movement. Tonight, we will have a meditation that is dedicated to Breonna Taylor because she represents voices that aren't heard. Then I will give a talk. And then we have special voices in the room that represent different aspects of society. And I will introduce them to you and they will share their voices. And after that's done, I'll close us out and we'll end the evening. So thank you for joining. So tonight we'll be doing 3 8-minute rounds in honor of Breonna Taylor, who was killed by 8 bullets through police injustice. So I would like everyone, if you're sitting on your cushion, to make sure you're sitting square and centered. If you're sitting on your chair, go ahead and slide to the edge of your seat. Make sure your feet are firmly planted. You want to go ahead and sit with a nice strong back. Tongue resting at the roof of your mouth. Chin with a slight tilt. Eyes staring out in front of you. And this is what we would call the meditative posture. From here, I invite everyone to connect to their breathing body. You might feel this in different places. Your stomach, your chest. Maybe you feel it throughout your whole entire being. But I would like you to place your awareness onto the sensation of your breathing body. And as you're sitting with your breathing body, something interesting will be happening. You might notice that thoughts are rising because of the heightened activity in our society with COVID-19, the Black Lives Matter movement. You might feel a rush of emotions as you sit. As those things arise, I ask that you label them thinking and bring your awareness back to your breathing body. And just stay with the sensation of the breathing body. And just be with it. Remember the basic instructions. You want to sit firmly on your cushion, sitting upright with a strong back, tongue resting at the roof of your mouth, eyes staring out in front of you with a soft gaze, shoulders rolled back and down, hands resting onto your thighs. I'm going to go silent for a little bit as you begin to work with your own mind, but I'm here. Just stay with your breathing body. And as thoughts, emotions arise, let them go and come back to your breathing body. If you happen to have gotten lost in a thought or an emotion, it's okay. Just review the posture. Bring your awareness back to your breathing body. And as your thoughts arise, just label it thinking. At some point, you will hear the chime bell ring 2 times, and I will give a bearing witness guiding meditation in honor of Breonna Taylor. Until then, just stay with your breathing body and let whatever arises, let it go. Label it thinking and bring your awareness back to your breathing body. Hold still with the meditative posture. And if you feel safe in your environment, I welcome you to close your eyes. In contemplative practices, we want you to go ahead and think and be with it. During this time, I will teach you the bearing witness mudra presented by the Buddha when he became enlightened. This mudra is for Breonna Taylor and all those that have passed, so that we start to learn how to witness other people's suffering and experiences for all that it is. Bearing witness creates an intimacy with other suffering. The same way that we cultivate our open mind and connectivity when we're on the cushion is the same thing that we do when we bear witness. So I'm going to ask that you go ahead and take your left hand and turn it with palms facing up and allow it to rest underneath your navel. As you are in your meditative posture. And with your right hand, gently tap at the middle of your chest, right in your heart center. Now, while you're doing this, I'm going to read off the names of people that have been brutally murdered by the injustice of the police. And at any time you feel any overwhelming or it takes too much, go ahead and take the right hand and touch the ground and allow it to be held there. When you hear the chime ring 2 times, I will ask that you shift your awareness back into traditional meditation. And we begin. Eric Gardner, New York. John Crawford, Ohio. Michael Brown Jr., Ferguson. Azelle Ford, Florence, California. Dante Parker, Victorville, California. Tamir Rice, Cleveland. Freddie Gray, Baltimore. Breonna Taylor, Breonna Taylor, Breonna Taylor. Seville Smith, 23-year-old from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Joel Afzado, 25 years old, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Tony Robinson, 19 years old, Madison, Wisconsin. Dontre Hamilton, 31 years old, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Frank Jude, 26 years old, Bayview, Wisconsin. Breonna Taylor, Breonna Taylor, Breonna Taylor. Sandra Blonde, Aiyana Stanley Jones, Danielle Bell, Tanisha Anderson, Katherine Johnson, Eleanor Bumpers, Shelley Fry, Kayla Moore, Corinne Gaines, Yvette Smith, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Breonna Taylor, Breonna Taylor. Allow those names to just wash over you, and the one that seemed to connect to you, allow it to be. And just be with that as you bear witness to the suffering that they went through at the hands of injustice. Shift your awareness back into traditional meditation. You want to ensure that you're sitting firmly on your cushion or your chair, feet shoulder width apart, shoulders rolled back and down, hands resting gently onto your thighs, tongue resting at the roof of your mouth, chin with a slight tilt, eyes staring out softly in front of you. Placing your awareness onto your breathing body. And as your thoughts or emotions arise, label it thinking and return to your breathing body. Just stay with the breath. If somehow you got lost in a thought, it's okay. Reset your posture. Connect to your breath. Allow whatever rises and let it go. And bring your awareness back to your breath. Thank you for joining this evening as we readjust and bring our focus to tonight's talk. The topic of tonight's talk is, what is the purpose of spiritual practice if it cannot be applicable to society. This is extremely important, especially right now when we're looking at the racial injustice and inhumane treatment of Black people. Can you say you're spiritual just by praying, meditating, and just by sitting and doing your ritual practices? Is that enough? Spirituality and enlightenment doesn't mean anything if it's just for you. So tonight we're going to look at that and look at spiritual activism. And what does that look like as we face the injustice for the Black Lives Matter movement? And this is really important because all faiths talk about this. You have Christians who say faith without works is dead. You have Muslims who say faith without deeds is dead. You have Jews who say struggle with God's instructions and practice your mitzvah, meaning your work. Traditional African religions say your faith cannot be separate from your life. And even my own lineage, Shambhala Buddhism, in the aspirations to have an enlightened society says, we have to discover our basic goodness and radiate it to all aspects of society, meeting life's challenges with tender-heartedness and compassion. All of them say not only do we practice our faith, but we have to have a step behind that. We have to take it out into the world. So then you say, well, what is happening right now? Why can't I just be a spiritual practitioner or a Buddhist by just sitting on my cushion? Why can't I do that? And this is the reason why. Buddhism was rooted in activism. The Buddha was an activist. This very spiritual path is started with activism. Let me give you a little history, because oftentimes we forget why things have started and how we got here today. When you look at the Buddha, 2,500 years ago, he comes out of India, who has 5 levels to their society. They're called caste systems. The first one is Brahmins, the second one is warriors, the third one is merchants, fourth is menial workers, and last is the untouchables. Buddha did 3 revolutionary acts, and he's not an imaginary character. Siddhartha is a real-life person. He left behind his wealth and his riches. He was destined to become a powerful leader and emperor of his nation. And he left that to go find truth, to become enlightened. The first revolutionary act that the Buddha did was when he sat underneath the Bodhi tree. And we have a character called Mara in the Buddhist tradition that is likened to the devil in the other faiths. And Mara was chastising him underneath that tree, and he was pushing it away. And Mara said, who is going to witness your enlightenment? There's no one here. And that's when the Buddha takes his right hand and touches the ground, and the earth roars loudly and says, I will bear witness to your enlightenment. Go forth and spread your Dharma. So he rejects standard thought. The second part is, as the Buddha is traveling, talking about his Dharma, spreading his newfound wisdom, he runs past an untouchable. This man did not want to be seen, because untouchables are the lowest of the lowest. They do the dirtiest work of society. They take the most hit and they're most impoverished. And that man was taught to hide himself when royalty or higher class systems walked by him. So he couldn't go anywhere and hide. So he just scrunched himself up against a wall and hid his face. The Buddha said, why do you hide your face? And they had a dialogue. The Buddha said, if you wish to find your own truth, you can join me on my journey. And the untouchable said, if you would have me, I will travel with you. And on that spot, the Buddha ordained him a monk, and he joined his Sangha. And a Sangha in Buddhist terms is a community. And they went along the way. Now the Brahmins heard about this and got really upset about it and came down to talk to the Buddha and said, how dare you do this? Spiritual teachings are for us, the Most High, and you go get an untouchable and ordain him to be a monk? That is unacceptable. And the Buddha said to them, who am I to stand in the way of him finding the truth for his life, of him obtaining enlightenment? Carry on. And he kept going, doing what the Buddha does. The third activist part, revolutionary part, was when Buddha ran across women. And he ordained the very first nuns into the Buddha tradition. And that upset everybody because women had their place. You got to remember, India was hierarchical, patriarchy. You just bear children and do other things as a woman. And here comes the Buddha to allow a woman, ordain her a nun, and she can now join the Sangha and practice her own way of trying to get to the truth and to become enlightened. Once again, society challenged the Buddha on this, like, you're doing too much. Why would you allow a woman to become a nun in your Sangha? That's not how we do things. And once again, the Buddha said to them, who am I to stand in her way of finding her own truth and her own enlightenment? These acts at that time were revolutionary, and they weren't met graciously. But the Buddha steadfast and kept going and allowing people to come join him. And the reason that he was able to do that is because he did his spiritual practice of meditation and meeting reality for where it was and unfolding the situations. And Buddha learned that day when he touched the ground with his right hand that we all were interconnected because the earth bared witness to what he had went through, his suffering with his mind. So spirituality does have action steps. And spirituality can, in fact, help create the enlightened society that we all want to have. So the question is, how did we get here and how do we go from here? I'm more interested to what do we do when we go from here. The Black Lives Matter movement is very specific in their demands, very specific. They just have 3 demands. The first one, and as I read them off and it starts to hit you a certain way or you're feeling odd, go ahead and bear witness. Because as I said, bearing witness allows you to become intimate with someone else's suffering and also allows you to gain awareness with what you see and how you feel. So these 3 demands that they, including me, are asking is 1, divest in police. 2, redistribution of wealth. And 3, demilitarize the police. These 3 requests are not difficult to understand why. First of all, let's hear divest in police, or as they're calling, defund the police. That word alone is very triggering for a lot of people because sometimes our minds get fixated on what we have and wanting to stay safe and protect what we view we have. They have a right to ask for the redistributions of wealth, and these 2 go together simply because according to an FBI report on October 17, 2019, it says nationwide, violent crimes and destruction to property dropped between 50 and 53%. NPR reported that in Milwaukee alone, violent crimes have fallen 33%. So if violent crimes are dropping or falling, why are excessive funds continuing to go to police? The aspect of demilitarizing the police force comes with some subtitles, which are saying, number one, police who do crimes while wearing the police badge should be charged with criminal offense. They should not be exempt from the law in which they are to serve. And that comes under qualifying immunity. At some point, that was justified. Didn't want to tie up the court systems with false accusations against police officers. But because of systemic racism and the way we view the darkness of skin, that has to be revisited and challenged. You no longer get to be exempt just because you're a police officer and you kill someone and no one questions why that has occurred. That is unacceptable, just across the board. And lastly, if a police officer kills an unarmed person, they should face charges. The Black Lives Matter movement is very specific. In 2018, there was a study done on the aspects of communities. They knew that factors of unemployment, incarceration, education, poverty, and home ownership dictated whether there was going to be high crime in a certain area. But something stood out to them, and that was segregation. They said the more segregated a community is, the more liable they are to have violent crimes. But this word segregation did not mean inclusion of white people in the communities of people of color or Black people. This word segregation was a code word. It was a code word for creditworthlessness, meaning if the community deemed it Black, they didn't have access to investments by business owners or the government through taxpayer money to build up the community. Because by the sheer notion that it's a Black community meant you weren't worthy to invest in. So if you're not investing in that community, then the other factors play a part. Meaning, if you have government officials saying that this area isn't worth investing in, then there cannot be new creation of employment opportunities because businesses won't come to that area. And so it continues to create this feedback loop of poverty, lack of education, because there's no money going into the community. What this sets this community up for then is gentrification, because as property values plummet, other people can come in at affordability and buy it and push, as I would like to call us, the untouchables out of their very own community. That is not just, and that's a problem. So what I would like to suggest to everyone is as we take a look at the Black Matters Lives movement, they also have one more thing. They're calling for everyone to do an action. And for people that might not be aware what that action is, I have a few. The first thing that you can do is donate. You can donate money to the Black Lives Matter National Fund, the Bail Project, or the ACLU. The second action step that you can do is check your feelings through bearing witness activities, such as the one we experienced today. You can attend a protest just to see what's happening. Whether you agree or not, you want to be able to have an intimate view of what's happening. You can attend a talk such as this one. You can actually assist with the protest, or you can simply put a sign on your window But let me tell you, when you put that sign on the window, there's more that needs to be had. You can't just hang a sign on the window and say, I did something. It just means that's your start. And the last part is take a look at the policies. If you are an influencer of policies, I need you to look at your agency and see, does it represent the communities that you represent? Do you have proper representation on your boards? When you write those policies out, are they in favor for the wealthy or the poor? If you are not a policy influencer, contact your local representative and state your position. Give them a phone call, flood their voice message, send them a letter. And lastly, support uncommon leadership. Oftentimes, we tend to go to those that constantly are on the media, in the news, but there's way more leadership out there. And that is one of the unique characteristics of the Black Lives Matter movement, is they have decentralized leadership, meaning get in where you fit in. So if you're an artist, you can create sacred areas in the neighborhood. If you're someone such as me, you can help your community take their spiritual practice off the cushion and into social action. And if you're a policy leader, challenge those that come before you. With that being said, I'd like to take a few minutes because we have some public officials that have joined us tonight. So before we open up for discussion, I would like, as always in our Black tradition, we lend our ear to the elder in the room. So Teju, feel free if you want to say hello and share your wisdom. You gotta unmute, Teju.
Okay. I hope everybody can hear me. First of all, let me just thank everybody for taking this time out of your life to be here. I try not to talk about, and I'll make this as quick as I can. I try not to talk about my background. And the reason I try not to talk about my background is because a lot of times we look for these experts who have a background, okay? And I've got a long, long background from 13 years old. And I'll rush real quick through some of it. And that is that being a part of the Milwaukee NAACP Youth Council that started the open housing marching, and also being with Dr. Martin Luther King during the 1963 March on Washington, etc. And I'll just stop it there. But the point being is I've been in this a long, long, long time. I'm 75, and I got into the movement when I was 13. And I remember being beat by police and the fire hoses and the dogs and all that. The point being real quickly is this: I'm glad everybody's here. And I just like to say this, that I'm inspired that we have come together at this time. And I want to thank Sister Tavita very much for inviting me. And I just want to say this, that let us never think that the job is finished. And let us never think that we can just now, we've hit this, it's big, it's popular now. And so we can begin to rest. Because one of the things and the mistakes that we've made in the past with the civil rights movement, with the Black Power movement, with the hippie movement, with all the movements that I've been involved in, including the Black Panthers and all those things, is that we thought that we had hit victory when we got what was an apparent change. And all they did was quiet us down long enough, or should I say, give us enough to quiet us down. And as soon as we got quiet, things went just back exactly to where they are. Things are no different now in practicality than they were for me back in 1958 when I was 13, when Daniel Bell got killed by a policeman, and the policeman threw a knife down beside him and said that he had, that he attacked him with a knife. And everybody knew Daniel Bell never had a knife. And before the policeman died, he admitted it. But the point being this, that because we don't see change, that means that we can never let up on the pressure. We can never, and again, as Tavita said, though I'm a person who's been in the streets and I'm in the streets with the young people, I'm not saying everybody has to do that, but we can never ever think that we have reached the position that we need to reach until there's no more suffering. Okay? So let us, if we can, continue, to even talk about it. You see, when I was with people in Islam, they said there are three ways to show your faith. One is to, physically work hard against it, do everything that you can, physically and socially and actively. The second is to always speak out against whatever you see that is unjust and not right. The third way is hate it in your heart. So the thing that I think we need to do, even if we can't do anything, is to remember that not even pretend that we like it until everybody is through with this suffering. Till everybody's through with this suffering, okay? And I think that that's very important. And back in the day, in the 60s, with the Black Power movement, we always quoted various people. And one said, don't mistake an enthusiastic burst of rebellion with a lifelong commitment to change. So the commitment to change has to be lifelong. And like everybody can do something. There's no person that can't do anything. Everybody can do something. And I would say this, that the only thing that is inexcusable is doing nothing. And we need to overcome what James Baldwin in 1960 called the myth of America. We need to overcome this myth of America, that everything that America does and everything the government does and everything that they do is right and for the people. Because every change that has happened to benefit the people in this country has come through disruption. There's been no positive changes except for disruption. I'll end by saying this. The reason why the first, I think, maybe 7, 8 presidents, or 4, I can't remember the number, were from Virginia and Maryland is because to vote back at that time, you had to be a big, rich landowner. You had to own one of those big, gigantic plantations, a big tract of land. And if you didn't own that, you couldn't vote. And then, of course, in 1928, people in Kentucky and Tennessee, the white men who couldn't vote, taxes were being demanded from them. They started rioting and they said, okay, we'll let you vote if you'll pay taxes. So everything comes out of that disruption. So we need to continue to disrupt, either socially disrupt our thinking, or else disrupt when we see something being done wrong, to speak up and disrupt the conversation. And if we all do that, if we all do whatever little or large we can do, and nobody's being demanded to be a martyr, and nobody's being demanded to make a great sacrifice, but all of us at one time have been quiet when we could have spoken, have been inactive when we could have acted, even without a threat to ourselves, okay? And I'm going to end this with this one statement, and that is, everybody talks about, Mahatma Mohandas Gandhi, and they talk about him being nonviolent. And this is a quote from Gandhi. He said, "Nonviolence is the best way of social change. However," he said, "violence is far superior to cowardice." So let's not mistake our inactivity for being noble and above it, actually, when it might just be cowardice. And I want to thank everyone for listening, and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Teju. Next in the house, we have Dr. Darrell Williams, Administrative Assistant for FEMA. Please introduce yourself and say hi to the room.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Darrell Williams. I'm Administrator for Wisconsin Emergency Management for the state of Wisconsin. But it's just really an honor for me to be here. And it's really, I want to thank you, Tavita, for inviting me. Didn't know that Brother Teju was going to be here, but I just want to tell him I love you and I appreciate all the just everything over the 25 plus years that I've known him when I worked in the system. But I just want to echo something that he said, you know, and I sit in and get a chance to talk to these so-called leaders at high levels. And I'm gonna tell you this right here. And what I told them, and I'll tell you, the people who are out here fighting this fight, these are not people with PhD degrees, and you don't need a PhD degree or a master's degree or a bachelor's degree. The only thing you need is a willing spirit to change. And you're seeing that at every age group. I've been out here to protest every night in some shape, form, or fashion, and I've been at protests all over the state. Madison, Walsall, Green Bay, little bitty small towns where there's very few Black people or minorities, but it's something that has hit people from all over this nation. And I think when people had a chance to see that particular video of George Floyd's death, it hit something inside of them that said, you know what? This right here, there's something terribly wrong about that. Where I can sit here and watch this for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. And that has struck a chord with people in many towns that I've been at where they've been protesting. They're mainly white outside of Milwaukee. So you can go on your internet if you haven't seen it and still play it. And even if you have seen it, you can go back and play it and watch it again. Now, we as adults, we have our own thinking about it. But when it gets to the point where our kids hear about it, even if the parents don't want them to see it, they have seen it. Somebody has shown it to them. So now that's a conversation that you got to sit down and have with your kids. And kids are a little bit more open-minded. They're not totally set in their ways and in their thinking as adults are. And so a normal question, if it just like happened in my house, Daddy, how can that happen to one person and nobody do anything about it? Because it's something within that person's heart. And like you just said, you have to hate it within your heart. But something in there doesn't sit right and doesn't settle well with me. And it's very difficult for an adult, even if you are set in your ways, to justify to your own kids how that is okay. And I think those are some of the things that's kind of stirring up the pot. But I think the key is not to quit. The moment that you decide to stop, and thinking that the change is already taking place, that's the moment where this movement will be defeated. I was asked once before who is really winning in these protests. How long do you think the protests are going to last? So I said, I think you're asking the wrong question, because the fact that you're asking me the question, how long do you think the protests are going to last, is you trying to get a gauge as to say, well, when will this quit? So then things can go back to the way that they were. And the question I told them you should be asking is, when is the change going to take place? The systematic change going to take place that would create a system where everybody get a chance to taste of what we call the American dream by redistributing the wealth that is there. So I was on a phone call today with FEMA, and these were all the regionals from 6 states. And I've never been asked this question before, but I'm glad they asked the question. The question was, what do you think we can do as FEMA to change the situation that's happening here throughout the United States? Because FEMA is worldwide. And so the fact that they even asked the question told me that they're thinking about their own thinking. They're thinking about ways that they can that they could try to do something a little different to help all people. But specifically, I told them, you definitely have to go into these communities and help the people that's been disenfranchised over the years of doing things the same way that you've been doing it. So that's going to take a different way of thinking, and it's also going to take a look at it's going to force you to take a look inside of your policies and procedures. And in many of the policies where people try to be equal, you have to realize being equal, they have not always been equitable to the people, especially in those disenfranchised areas. So I think this movement is very strong. I think it takes all of us. I'm glad to see that there are a lot of white people who are really out there protesting, but you're going to have to mean it inside of your heart, because at the time where it comes to take courageous action and stand before people who are going to make that change, everybody's going to have to be strong and stay the course. This can't be a rah-rah Black Lives Matter, because it's, feels like it feels good at the moment to be out there protesting and so forth and all that kind of stuff like that. It's going to have to be some behind the scenes action that's taking place. And I'm going to tell you, the other thing is this. When I was interim superintendent of schools, somebody asked me, they said, well, Dr. Williams, what's the most important thing you have to know to be a superintendent? And I said to myself, you got to be able to work with kids. You got to work with the community. You got to, bring in businesses and fundraise and do all these things to try to help kids. And the guy told me, he said, Dr. Williams, no. He said, the most important thing you need to know as a superintendent of a school district is how to count to 4. He said, can you count to 4? 1, 2, 3, 4. I said, yes, sir. He said, because there's 7 board members and you only need 4 votes. And if you don't have that, I don't care how great your ideas are, they're not going to pass. So what I'm saying to you is this. Everybody's out here saying Black Lives Matter. At some point in time, people need to be at the table to vote on certain things, because we are still somewhat of a democratic society, and we have to have people in those elected positions, so when that time comes, people can actually vote and enact some of the changes and policies that we want to see. And if we're not there, we'll be right back here, or our kids will be right back here singing the same song 10, 15, 20 years from now. So, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. For those of you that may have not noticed, the city attorney was in here tonight. He had to go address something, so he can't share his wisdom with us, but he was here for the duration of it. And as these conversations go on, he is open to coming back to our Shambhala gatherings and provide insight or hear our voices as needed. So I also want to thank our newly appointed City Attorney Spencer Tierman for taking a moment to join us as he has to do what he needs to do. With that being said, we heard a lot tonight, and I would like to open up to everyone. So you can, before you undo the mics, I just want some housekeeping. I would prefer if you're going to say something, then undo your mic and speak, so we're not all speaking at once. If for whatever reason you're having trouble, you can go ahead and hit the chat, and I can read your questions out loud and then answer it. But this is a first way of having a community dialogue on a very, very sharp topic, racial injustice between Blacks and whites, and we're all in the room. If it gets difficult, I gave you a specific practice called bearing witness. This would be a time to use that as you open up to hear the realities of someone else outside of your own and recognizing how you feel with that. So I welcome any comments, suggestions, action steps, or questions.
Hello?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Okay, this is Teju. And again, how you doing, Brother Darrell or Dr. Williams? How you doing? Good to see you again. Anyway, here's the thing, just real quickly. Often you hear people talking about, look at the damage that's being done. Look at, and people have like been arguing with me about, well, I agree with the marching, but I don't agree with the violence. I don't agree with the violence. I don't agree with the looting. I don't agree with that. First of all, that's less than 1% of the people out there doing that. That's less than 0.1% of the people out there doing that. I think all that should just be ignored and like focus on what the intention of 99.9% of the people are. And I told the person, well, yeah, well, see, these demonstrators are wrong. They're out there. I said, look, if you're going to blame everything, if you're going to blame each demonstrator for what one demonstrator or two or three demonstrators did in breaking the window, then you need to blame every policeman for what Chauvin did, to George Floyd. And we can't do that, but we have to focus on them. With all those children out there, and I've been out there, and I know if you haven't, you should just take a moment and join them for a minute, even if it's just for a block. And just look at the marvelous young faces. Look at the hopeful young faces. Look how can I say? See, they know they're right. And when someone knows they're right, then they can walk 20 miles. They can walk from Milwaukee all the way to, a far out suburb, or they can walk that far and walk back because they know they're correct. And if we want to really help them, we need to, no matter what we're doing, speak out in favor of what they're doing. They have to disrupt. If a demonstration is not a disruption for the powers that be, it's just a parade. They can like eat popcorn and drink Coca-Cola and enjoy it. It has to be a disruption, and we have to support that disruption and understand that if you go all the marches that I've been in with the young people this last couple of weeks, all the marches that I've been in, I haven't seen any of the destruction. Now, I know there's been destruction, but I've only seen it on television. If they chose not to show that on television, most of us wouldn't know what happened, because like what we see when we're there is we don't see that. So I'm going to be quiet now, but I just want to say that whenever you get an opportunity, whenever you hear people talking about it, whenever you hear people criticizing, whenever, just tell them to be quiet and understand that these are our young people who are tired of us old people taking all of this injustice and acting like it's all right. Thank you.
Earlier today, on that same call with FEMA, someone said the same thing. And I told the person, I said, I think you're mistaken. I said, because I will tell you, after being out of these protests just about every night, I said, I've seen where people, they might drive a little, they might swerve a little bit, but there's nobody that's been hurt by any of it. And I said, those protests have been peaceful the whole time. And in many cases, the police, when we go to different places, and one police might say, well, no, we can't go that way, but another police will open up the floodgates and allow us to go because they realize that it's peaceful. But the other thing is, as far as with the damage and stuff, I say, you looking at it and you saying that it's a riot and it's looting. I said, but I said, the people in the protest, they don't view it that way. They view it as this is an uprising, and they want people to know that they are dissatisfied and beyond dissatisfied with the way things have taken place, maybe through their own experience, but definitely through the injustice that they see and experience right before their very eyes. And before this whole thing is over with, they're going to let you know it, and they're going to, and they're demanding change about it. And you can either be on the right side of history or you could be on the wrong side of history. But people are sitting here, and I've heard young people say, man, this right here is, I'm right and I'm willing to die for it. And if you can't understand that, and these are young people, I'm talking, I mean, you see 5-year-olds out there, 10-year-olds, 20-year, I mean, walking, and you are right. As far as walking, I didn't realize that I walked probably about 15 miles from downtown around these circles to past Whitefish Bay. And I'm gonna tell you, people just didn't feel that because they felt that they were doing the right thing. And the question, you know, I tell people what Ben Franklin once said, that justice will never be served until those who are unaffected are just as outraged as those people who are. And I always end it, I say, well, the question is, are you outraged about it? Because if you are, then you can definitely look and see what's happening. And not only look, it's not going to be enough for us to look at the video and get on the radio and talk about what happened and talk about the change. We're going to have to be a part of the change process. And we know the only people who like change are babies. That's for sure. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And either you're going to be a part of it or you're not. But this is definitely a marathon and not a sprint. So thank you.
Definitely. Thank you. Anyone else have anything to add or share?
Hi, this is Mariah.
Hi, Mariah.
I've gone to probably 4 protests, and I will say that every demographic is present. And for those who are uncomfortable, you will find every level present. Wedding parties have come out to greet them, young and old dancing in the street, people in costumes, a more party-like crowd, and a very formal crowd who, you know, are like me. You know, we want to hand out our protest fact sheets and such, and control the mic and do all of our chants. So I just want to emphasize that if you're uncomfortable, still go, because more than likely your people are there, and you'll find them. And when it meets a level where you're like, I don't agree with this, then you can leave. But at each protest, I felt safe and I felt powerful, and I felt like I was supporting the young people who were out there in a less formal way than what I'm used to, which is, you know, looking at regulations and such.
Thank you.
You know, I'll just say this here. You know, on June 3rd, you know, we were walking down by, what is that school? Riverside High School. And it was probably at least 2,000 people as part of the protest.
Mm-hmm.
And so as we were walking, there was this group, and it was it was 8 white guys and 2 black guys. They had AK-47s and M16 assault rifles. And one big guy looks to be like, you know, maybe you know, Mexican or Latinx. But he had this white supremacist flag wrapped around him. Now think about that. What made that group feel that comfortable? And it was a very diverse group that was already protesting, but it was mainly black on this night, to come in that crowd. And so when we asked the question, they were part of a group, they called themselves the Boogaloo Boys. Some of you may have heard of that group. I had never heard of that group before. And one of my former students said, Dr. Williams, you know that's a white supremacist group. And I said, oh, is it? And so long story short, this is a group that kind of switched my thinking about what's, you know, I know there were like different sets of white supremacist group, but this is a group that, you know, I hit my Google and read up on it a little bit, and to just verify what they were saying, that they were a group that stands against racism of any form. African American, whites, Latinx, gay, whatever the case may be, they stand against that. And so as the march went on, and I said to myself, this is a little privilege, one, within itself, because I just wondered if you had 8 or 9 black people in that crowd with AK-47s and M16 rifles, would we have been stopped? The other side of the coin is, throughout this process, as we walked for miles, every time we would run up on the police at a different intersection, they would run out of the crowd and run and get between the protesters and the police with these AK-47s and M16s. And there was no problems. The whole night, there was no violence, any of that stuff. It was just peaceful. But I just said to myself, what was the real motive there? And it reminded me of something that I see quite a bit, is sometimes you have people with very, very different thoughts. But sometimes, even in that sense, they find something or area where you have a mutual interest and you end up having to work together for whatever reason. Not saying that's going to be the gold nugget and the gold standard moving forward, but I just wondered to myself, was there some change that was there that made them feel, that was this whole George Floyd's murder, the trigger that made them feel for this particular march that there was a mutual interest there and that we could probably form some bond with this group. But I just hope that it was all in, just that it was genuine and real sincere. And after this, then these are not the same people that we'll be fighting against on another, on another plantation, if you will.
Thank you. We have a few minutes left before our time comes to an end. Is there any other voices out there who would like to lend an aspiration, a comment, or a question?
Pardon me, if I can just take 30 seconds, tell you what I did out there. When I was out there walking with the children, first of all, I thanked all the children for inspiring us, again, us old people who came out of the civil rights movement and the Black Power movement. But the second thing is, for all the young white people, I thank them. I said, I want to thank all you white people for being here, because it's been my experience that if you guys hadn't been here, the police would have drove their cars into us, beat us. They would have arrested us. They probably would have shot a few of us. But all those young white people there, okay, they know what that would look like to the world and what America would look like to the world. It would look like one of those countries that the United States starts bombing when that many people rise up against the injustice of the government. So I want to thank all the young white people and to say that everybody was involved. I saw people in wheelchairs, okay, rolling their wheelchairs for miles and miles. So I said, well, let me help. The young people wouldn't let me help. They're pushing the wheelchairs and asking me, you want some water? You want this, Baba? You want this, sir? So anyway, I'm totally inspired. Denmark Vesey said we must not just be dissatisfied. We must be so dissatisfied we will act. And so now people are acting.
This is Kendra. I just wanted to say this was beautiful, and thank you all so much for this. The meditation, the excellent words, everything was just well articulated. The cues, the way that everything, you all worked together, it was beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you, Kendra.
This is Leslie, and I want to say first, thank you so much to Vida and Teju and Dr. Williams. The words that you have shared with us tonight are illuminating to me, and what I hear is your excitement about the diversity and the hugeness of what's happening right now, and I'm excited about that too. And I think it's an important thing that's happening. I think it's a sea change, or it could be a sea change one of the important things that you both have said is we have to keep at this. And I get that, and I am on board with that. One thing that I have learned in these past weeks, one little thing that I've learned is about to do with defunding the police. I am in favor of taking a look at that. It could be a solution in different places. And it's actually happened in one city in this country, and that's Austin, Texas. And the way that it happened was to have a community group. It took about 3 years to put it together, who got familiar with the police union and then got involved in legislating. And so I'm quite intrigued by that. What I've done at this point is just find the union contracts on our City of Milwaukee website. They are long and they're legal documents, and I'm not a lawyer, so I don't really know what the next step is to take with that, but I feel like it's something. I don't know if anybody else would be interested in looking at that as well. There's an awful lot to do, and maybe this isn't the thing to do at this moment, but perhaps at a point in the future. Thank you again, Tavita and everyone.
Hey, Ms. Tavita, again, I know we ain't got but a second here. Just want to thank everyone for being on the call. And ma'am, I really appreciate your words there. But I'll just say this. A lot of times, people look at things as black and white, and we know that race over the years and it continues to play a role today. But what I kind of felt and what I heard from a lot of people is the issue. They realize the focus on right and wrong has kind of taken center stage at this point. And I think a lot of people communicated the how they felt about the injustice that has taken place over the years, and not that they didn't know about it, because it's been talked about, but the fact that they saw it for 8 minutes and 46 seconds right there before your eyes. And I will tell you, one person said to me, I saw it, but I still can't believe what I saw. And I just don't believe that happened. And I stopped her and I said, this is what you got to realize, is it happened. Did see it. You need to recognize that it did happen right before your very eyes, because sometimes you can say it so many times and you can convince yourself that that's not what you saw. And it was what you saw. And now you have to realize that something has to be done to change that for people who are living in the present and moving forward into the future. And it takes everybody. It's not just Black folks that got to say something about it. It has to be everybody, and because it could happen to you. And if you don't believe it, all you have to do is keep living and you'll find out.
So on that note, go ahead.
I just wanted to ask, I can't see you on the screen now, but Davida, is this going to be available, there you are, for a while, so that I could tell other people in my Sangha or in other Sanghas that it's something that they might want to watch?
Yes, we will make it available. I will work with Kirk to do that.
It was very powerful.
Thank you. So as we conclude tonight, remember, spirituality is not a way to do racial bypassing or spiritual bypassing or even become a spiritual zombie. The reason that we do spiritual practices is so that we build up our personal power so we can face the oncomings of the challenges and sufferings of life. When you bear witness, what you are doing is saying, I can no longer stay in the not knowing. I have to move forward with action steps. Black Lives Matter put out 3 very distinct demands: divest in police, redistribution of wealth, and demilitarize the police. And within that, they have a very valid reason, because It is duly noted by research that violent activities have decreased by 50%. And so they're asking to take out institutional racism means you address the code words, such as segregation. Segregation for too long has been about black and white, but reality is it's a code word to say we are not worth investing in. And in simple ways, you can ask your community advocates, people in public office, to redirect taxpayer dollars to invest in communities that are underrepresented. You can also donate, work with bearing witness, and if you influence policy change, do that. This is very simple math. 1 + 1 = 2. Very simple. We don't have to go back into history to see injustice. With that being said, in the Shambhala tradition, when we do work like this, we dedicate our merit. So tonight we're going to do both of them. And those that know it, please unmute your mic and say it along with me. And you'll hear the bell ring 3 times and our session will end. Here I go. By this merit, may all obtain ambition. May it defeat the enemy wrongdoing. From the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. From the ocean of samsara, free all beings. By the confidence of the golden sun of the great east, may the lotus garden of the Rigdon's wisdom bloom. May the dark ignorance of sentient beings be dispelled. May all beings
enjoy profound, brilliant glory.
Good night, everyone. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Tavita. Thank you, Teju. Thank you, Dr. William.
Thank you all so much. Hey, Tavita. This is so beautiful.
Thank you, Tavita.
Thank you,
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Tavita.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Teju.
All right. Thank all of you. Thank all of you.
You too.